Hello gamers and welcome back. I'm Rob, of course, or Warshak if you want to call me by my in-game name. We're going to be going over the monthly meta, so basically what are the most popular, powerful decks being played at the moment. I know the recent expansion has just released. We're not even yet a month in, but there are quite a few decks that have been sticking out more so than some others, and have proven to be quite powerful on ladder. So keep in mind all the decks that we're going to go over for each individual class are my particular builds for those decks. So if you don't like the cards, feel free to change them, but the deck kind of structure and foundation of how it works is the same regardless of a few tech cards that I decided to put in there. We'll also be talking about, of course, you know, what the deck does, why it's so powerful, and kind of if anything has changed with the new cards. The first class we're going to talk about is Priest, more specifically the Highlander Dragon variant. So currently there's quite a few powerful Priest decks at the moment, two of them being a Highlander deck that revolves around drawing a lot of cards, and the other revolving around more of so of a Dragon synergy. The Dragon synergy one, which we're showing on the screen right now, has a little bit more oomph in the department of being able to play minions that can actually do damage, and you kind of have a secondary win condition with your minions attacking their face. You know, if you have a good dragon curve, it's really hard for a lot of decks to keep up with that, especially other priests, if you're able to put out the Twilight Drake very early on. The downfall of this particular, the Dragon Highlander versus just the normal Highlander, is the fact that this deck doesn't have as much draw as the other one, and with the win condition of, you know, being able to play Raza into Anduin and then comboing that with Velen, Mind Blast, and however many spells you want to play until your opponent's dead for free. This, again, revolves around the minions. The other wants to draw into the combo as quick as possible. So if this deck, let's say your opponent clears a lot of your minions, and this deck doesn't have the draw into Anduin, you've kind of lost out on your Anduin win condition because you've sacrificed, you put more minions in there instead of cards that draw. Looking at the actual Highlander draw one, this one, as you can see here, doesn't really run any of the dragon package whatsoever, but it also runs a lot more draw. It also has Harrison in the deck, which allows you to draw when your opponent plays a weapon. Weapons are very powerful right now. If you look at Warlock, most of them are always playing the skull. If you look at Mage, they're always playing the Alunith. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And then, you know, if you're playing against Paladin, which is also a really popular deck right now, you've got Rallying Blade, you've got the Maul, and of course you've got the legendary Paladin weapon. So Harrison is actually not a bad tech at the moment for being able to get a good amount of draw in there. If you were to pick out of all the Priest decks, which one's the most powerful, it's going to be just the standard, you know, cycle a lot Highlander Priest deck, which is the one we see here. The reason being is the dragon one is cool and it mixes up a little bit, but in the end, the combo is all you need. The faster you draw Raza, the faster you draw Anduin, and the faster you can cycle to those cards, the quicker you win the game. Regardless, like, the dragons are cool, but you know, sometimes they don't win the game. Meanwhile, Raza and Anduin always win the game when basically you get those two cards. So this deck really hasn't changed a lot. The only new card from the new set that this deck really actually utilized was the Scream, and that's just because it was another great AoE card, and it actually doesn't even have to worry about killing creatures. Regardless of their size, it just shuffles them into your opponent's deck, and you don't really care about how many cards in your opponent's deck because you're just looking for your combo as quick as possible. Again, the deck is aiming to do one thing and one thing only, and it does it very, very well, and that's why it's basically considered the best deck right now, and it's banned almost... it's one of the most banned classes at the moment in tournaments. Moving to another Priest deck that has been around a little bit. It got a couple new tools, but not too much, as that's the Big Priest. Probably out of all of the Priest decks, this is the least popular at the moment. It was actually one of the more popular ones, I would have to say. Between, in the last expansion, Highlander Priest and Big Priest, it was like a 50-50 split depending on where you were in ladder. Some days you saw a little bit more than the other, but you know, you couldn't for sure say it was one or the other. At the moment, when you go into ladder, this is again going to be the least popular. It revolves around playing Barnes, and then Barnes pulling out a big minion, then using Eternal Servitude, Shadow Essence to continuously pull big minions. Not a lot has changed about this deck. A couple keynotes is that it obtained Lesser Diamond Spellstone, which is what makes this deck, I think, a little bit more powerful at the moment. So this deck got more powerful when it was already good, but the problem is a lot of the other decks that are currently good got even more powerful than this one. So it's like, as good as this deck is and as powerful as you can kind of, you know, Barnes on 4, Eternal Servitude into 5 or whatnot, like a lot of other decks have at least the same power level, if not better. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's one of the reasons why we're not seeing a lot of Big Priest. But anyway, Lesser Diamond Spellstone allows you to summon up to, I believe, 3 or 4 minions that died this game based on how many spells you play, and each time you play 4 spells it upgrades for 1. So I'm pretty sure it's 3 minions that have died this game get resurrected is the max one. And then most of the time, you know, you're summoning huge cards like Ysera, Rage, Obsidian Statue, Lich King, all that good stuff. Again, this deck is also running the new Scream card because it's just great AoE, and you really don't care about how many cards you put in your opponent's deck. Most of the time, you're just clearing their board. But if you're playing against aggro, you know, your opponent's an aggro druid, they living mana, you Scream, they're very sad. So not too much improvement on the Big Priest, but still out there. And then we have a deck that actually wasn't around at all, and it's just appearing, and that's going to be, I don't really know what to call this besides just like kind of like Big Spell Priest, because it runs 2 of the biggest priest spells in the game, and that's double Mind Control, double Free from Amber. And the reason it does this is it has Spiteful Summoner in the deck, and it actually has no other spells. It also includes the Dragon package, so it has a little bit of that curvy early game where you can like Northshire Cleric into Netherspite Historian, into Talon Priest, into like Twilight Drake and a Scalebane or Operative. From there you go Spiteful Summoner, Bone Marrow. Like, you have a really sick curve if you hit all those cards, and there's not a lot of decks that can deal with it. The reason it only has 2 spells in the deck is because with Spiteful Summoner has a 100% chance to pull your Free from Amber or Mind Control, giving you an 8 or a 10 mana minion. Those are kind of the most powerful slots right now, and you can just cheese out the game on turn 5 if you coin out the Spiteful Summoner. If you just play them on 6, get a Rage pulls, I don't know, like another 5/5 or a Scalebane. I mean, you're just chilling. So this deck is actually pretty popular at the moment. Very curve stony due to the fact that, again, it only runs 4 spells in the entire deck, and all of them can't be used until turn 8 or beyond. So it's definitely very reliant on board control rather than, you know, being able to play the early game a little bit slower and then using your spells later on for field control. There is no Dragonfire Potion in this deck. There is no Scream. The only board control you have in the early game is through your Duskbreaker, so that's actually a really important card to either keep if you're playing against aggro or to get from your Netherspite Historian. Besides that, the deck kind of speaks for itself. There was something that popped into my mind that I wanted to mention. Yes, that's what I was going to say. There's actually a combo Dragon Priest running around that Asmo's been playing, and he's been doing very well with it. The thing is, there's not a lot of other players playing that same deck. I played hundreds of games this season, and I think I've played it maybe played against it 1 time. It's a really good deck, but it's not popular. And again, these are the most popular decks we're seeing on ladder. I don't want to show you every deck that happens to be out there because that's kind of a waste of time. You kind of want to know what 90 to 95% of the time what you're going to see on ladder, and that's what we're going over. All right, so that wraps it up for the Priest deck. Let's head on over to, I believe Paladin is our next deck, so let me pull those up for you guys real quick. We have the Murloc Aggressive Paladin deck here. There's currently 2 popular Paladin decks. It's the Murloc Aggressive Paladin, and then there's just the Aggressive Paladin does not run the Murloc package. So the Murloc package, I don't want to say is a little bit slower. It kind of, it's hard to say because they both have their like pros and cons. One has like more chargers. This one has more like board stability with cards like Gentle Megasaur, War Leader, and overall just being able to buff your Murlocs to be able to, you know, make better trades. Both of them basically have the same kind of go package play. You throw up on the board, you play as much as you can, you Divine Favor, you draw your hand back, you throw up on the board again. By that time you've drawn another Divine Favor. By turn roughly 6 you're able to play Sunkeeper, wrap up the game, or you're playing your legendary Paladin weapon, you're smacking him in the face for 4 every turn and then playing buffed minions. It's a very, very powerful deck. Paladin at the start of the expansion actually didn't see a lot of play at all. Towards, you know, after a few days people are like, oh my gosh, you know, Call to Arms is really good. You know, there's a couple of Call to Arm decks that weren't so good. People have been modifying their lists, and this is kind of what people have come up with among the gist. You know, this is, again, all of these deck lists are my deck lists, but the foundation of the deck, again, is the same throughout all of them. They run a Murloc package, they run the weapons. Some people decided they want to run buffs in this deck. Some people don't run buffs in the deck. You know, it's up to you. If you're like, Rob, where's your Blessings of King and Spike Ridge Steed? You know, that's not what makes the deck. That's just kind of like curtains and a nice couch that you can put on the deck. All right, moving towards the just Aggro Paladin, we have it here. It kind of, I guess you could say, revolves around more of the recruits. You've got stuff like the Vine Cleavers, the Lightfuse Steglodon. You've got Level Up. You also run Lost in the Jungle. So again, a little bit more recruit heavy, not really on the Murloc start, but still very aggressive. You do run buffs in this deck. You do run the 2 kings. Some even run the steed. But again, it's kind of up to preference. Again, this is my particular build of the other Aggro Paladin. I would put Control Paladin in here, but the only Control Paladin I've actually gone against, or I've actually played, is me. I guess I've played, I lied. I actually played one OTK Paladin. They were playing, you know, the combo with Uther, and then you play the Goblin dude that lets you redo your hero power. Again, not that popular of a deck. Occasionally you'll see it maybe once every 50 games, but I don't even think that's worth mentioning due to the fact, again, it is not that popular. These are the most, you know, 90 to 95% of all the Paladins you play will be playing one of these 2 renditions of Paladin at the moment. It's unfortunately that 2 aggressive Paladin decks had to be what was in the meta, not a more control-based one, but we're still working on it. I think our Control Paladin actually has a lot of merit, and it's actually, it has I think above a 65% win rate for us, but we'll keep testing it. Moving on to Rogue, we have the Miracle Rogue. It actually got a lot of great tools in this past expansion, one of which is the Strider, which allows you to put spiders in your deck, and then when you draw them, it summons the spiders. You can of course run 2 of these guys, and it allows you to generate an immense amount of value and up to an extra what is that, 6 4/4s in your deck. And if you can mimic pod 1, or you can, you know, Valyra the Hollow 1 and play 2 of them at the same time, you get an immense amount of value there. But besides that, due to the fact the reason this deck works really well right now is because Priest and Warlock are very powerful. Both those decks, one of them cannot kill 4 attack minions. This deck summons a lot of 4 attack minions. And then if we look at Warlock, it has a lot of big minions it wants to play. So, you know, if you sap those minions, they can't really do much about it. Plus this has, you know, the ability to push out some good amount of damage. It runs the Vile Spine Slayer. Just 1 though at the moment, because 2 seem to be too much in the Miracle Rogue deck. Again, if you don't like 1 Vile Spine Slayer, you can put in 2. It's just my particular take on the deck. I know there's going to be the comments like, Rob, you're an idiot. Why are you running Vile Spine Slayer? I don't know, man. I just got a 70% win rate with Miracle Rogue. This is my list. This is what I like. If you want to run 2, you can run 2, man. But that's not the core of the deck. The core of the deck is being able to play Auctioneer, a bunch of spells, Arcane Giants, and blow out your opponent that way. Moving to probably the most popular rogue deck that you'll see on ladder, and that's going to be the Tempo Rogue deck that runs the Prince. The deck is exceedingly powerful. Again, not because of all the spells that are in the deck. There's only, I think, 3 or 4 spells in the deck. It basically just revolves around you playing very highly statted minions, or minions that have great abilities. You know, you look at Swashbuckler, Prince, Edwin, Agent, Shadow Dancer, none of which are that powerful by themselves, but in combination with cards, they can be exceedingly annoying to deal with. You know, you've got your Pirate package with the South Sea Deckhand, Vicious Fledgling. I know you haven't seen that in a while. I put it in a bunch of my decks because you haven't seen it in a while, which means people either will forget how brutal the card is. Like, it's one of those cards where you play Fledgling, your opponent doesn't kill it, you win the game. Like, how would you not? That's just an amazing turn 3. You play a turn 3 card. If your opponent does not kill it, you will win the game. So I like, if you're going for like the highest win rate, why would you not put cards in the deck that impact the game that early on? You know, you play a turn 2 card like Prince, you're favored the rest of the match. You play a turn 3 card like Fledgling, if it doesn't die, you're favored the rest of the match. So just insane cards in this deck, especially if you print something and get buffed. Again, this deck saw the inclusion of the new Corridor Creeper card because it has a lot of minion combat. When there's a lot of minion combat going on, Corridor Creeper gets reduced every turn, or however many minions die, and you can end up throwing out 2 Corridor Creepers on turn 3 or 4 for free, and you just played 10/10 in stats on turn 3 or 4, which is fucking stupid and ridiculous, and I don't know why Blizzard allowed such a thing, but regardless, that's what we have right now, and that's what people are doing. It kind of annoys me a little bit because Molten Giant was a card that, I know this is a little tangent, but for those of you who were around in Handlock days a while ago before the Molten Giant nerf, Molten Giant said, you know, if you lose this much life, this card becomes this much cheaper. And I believe on turn 10, or when you're at 10 life, you could play a Molten Giant for free, and it was an 8/8, and they thought that was too powerful. But it's like, you're at 10 life. You've sacrificed a bit to be able to play these things, because when you're at 20 life or 25 life, you can't play the things because they just cost too much. Meanwhile, Corridor Creeper, regardless of life totals, it just has to sit in your hand 1 to 2 turns, and then you can play it for free. And if you're playing 2 of them prior to turn 5, that's 10/10 in stats for free. Meanwhile, and you could be at 20-25 health, and you've lost no tempo. Meanwhile, like the Giant deck, you had to actually be at a low life total in order to get the thing to work, and that's scary in itself, right? You're almost in double Fireball range or Fireball Frostbolt. So there's just a lot of counterplay to that. So moving on to probably the least popular of the rogue list, but definitely something you want to mention, and that's going to be the Kingsbane Mill Rogue. We've been actually playing quite a bit of this, and it seems to be a very powerful deck against any form of mid-range to control deck. I mean, once you get your Kingsbane out, you buff it a little bit, and you find your draw. I mean, it's almost impossible to lose. No, I wouldn't say impossible to lose with this deck, but it's really rough to beat this deck. I mean, with the Vanishes, the Saps, Valeeras, the Mimic Pods, the Blade Furies, the Weapon, this deck is just so much fun. It revolves around... I used to only have one win condition, and that was fatiguing your opponent through draw mechanic like the Cold Light Oracle. You'd Shadow Step your Cold Light, you'd vanish your Cold Light, you get your opponent to draw a bunch of cards, then you drop the Shadow Blade or something like that. It's a 3-mana rogue weapon, or you'd play the creature that allows you to be immune, and then you wouldn't take fatigue and your opponent would. But now with the inclusion of Kingsbane, you actually have the ability to lifesteal, do huge amounts of damage, and it's very hard to fatigue because the Kingsbane continually goes back in your deck. And at some points you can even Valeera Kingsbane into Kingsbane, and then you actually have multiple Kingsbanes going, which means you never really have to draw a dead card. But again, not all of the Kingsbanes are buffed, so you'd have to look for the one that's buffed based on, you know, your current situation. A lot of thinking, very technical play here. I wouldn't say it's a high risk, high reward, but you play well with this deck, you get rewarded. You make a mistake somewhere in the game. One mistake could lose you the game. Meanwhile, if you look at, you know, decks like Aggressive Paladin and stuff like that, you make a mistake early on, it's kind of just like, whatever. You can throw up on the board some more in Divine Favor and it's all okay. But decks like this, definitely making mistakes, you want to minimize that to the max, which we've seen in our deck testings and training videos when we were playing this, I believe, the other day. So moving on to Hunter. Currently, there's really only one Hunter deck that kind of strikes the eye, and it's the only one you're really going to see. It's going to be the Face Hunter deck here. There's not really much to say. The entire deck revolves around you attacking your opponent's face as much as possible by minimizing your creatures dying and maximizing their damage output. There was the No Spell Hunter, which popped up for a couple days. I don't want to say it doesn't exist, guys, because you're going to be like, Rob, what about Spell Hunter? I was playing at rank 20 or 25 or 15 or whatever, and the Spell Hunter's there, and everybody's happy, and it's a crazy deck. The thing is, the deck was played a lot on the day, like the first weekish of the expansion, and then it disappeared completely. It's gone. I was playing against like 20% Hunters for like the first couple days, and now I haven't played against a Hunter in God knows how long. And if it is a Hunter, it's always this just face Hunter, smack him as many times as you can list. Again, you know, depending on the rank you're in, yes, the amount of weird and silly decks that you play will be higher. You know, you're rank 20, rank 15, rank 10 at the end of the season. You know, you're going to have a lot of people just playing wonky stuff. But if you're kind of on the curve of like, it's, you know, week 1 in the season, you're rank 10 or rank 5, you know, people are going to be playing some pretty serious decks because obviously they're at that high of a rank that early on. And they're not going to be playing any wonky stuff. Again, most popular decks. Face Hunter is the most popular of the Hunters, and that's why we're covering it. I'm just trying to mitigate as much of those comments as I can, guys. I know you're like, Rob, I understand. Shut the fuck up. But I know there's going to be those comments, and I don't want to answer them. So hopefully you guys can stick up for me when they do appear, because I know they're always there. All right, so looking at, unfortunately, that's really the only Hunter deck to go over, and it's not even that great. Like, the Hunter deck is good, but it's like there's not a whole lot to talk about. The deck doesn't have any like super core synergies to it. It's just you play a bunch of beasts early on, you kind of throw up on the board. You don't have cards like Divine Favor to make up for it, but you do have a hero power that does 2 damage a turn. It's just you shake and bake with this deck. All right, so moving to Druid, they have quite a few. I wouldn't say quite a few. There's like 2 powerful decks for them. One of them is kind of the same deck, just like a rebrand. So this is the traditional Jade Druid. It doesn't run anything too funky. It includes the new branching paths that allows you to, you know, draw a card, gain armor, or give your minions plus attack. You know, that's kind of depending on what situation you're in, you pick what you need. People are like, hey, Rob, why don't you have Medivh in the deck? Why don't you have Kun in the deck? Again, those aren't really staples in my opinion. Kun is kind of like a win more card. You get a 7/7 plus UI, but besides that, he just sits in your hand as a 7/7. Meanwhile, if you look at what this deck actually does, it summons Jades. What do Jades do? Jades get bigger, and eventually you're going to be playing a 1-mana Jade Idol that summons like a 10/10 Jade. So why the hell am I spending, you know, holding on to this 10-mana 7/7, and it's using a card spot, which could be ramp, it could be draw, you know, it could be life gain, it could be a taunt. No, it's just a Kun. or like a Medivh that's going to summon another minion that's random that could be powerful, but it could not be, and the Medivh is only an 8 mana 7/7, again, Jade Idol. You just want to, the whole point of Jades is to make as many Jades as fast as possible to make your opponent not be able to deal with their highly statted selves. That is the point. Anything other is kind of just extra. So the core of this deck is to ramp, UI, JJ Jade, JJ, JJ. And it's just always anything extra. You're trying to woo nilly the Hawkswalks. You know what I'm saying? And this other one, same kind of Jade thing, runs no. This is an interesting deck, by the way, guys. This is one of the spicier Jade decks. It's the fast Jade deck that revolves. It has the Auctioneer in it, has the Innervates, and it has the Naturalizes. So this deck does exactly the same thing as the other Jade deck, but faster. So you're basically ramping and cycling through your deck exceedingly quickly to try to get Jade Idol to be the only card in your deck. From there, you play like Gadgetzan, you Jade Idol, Jade Idol, Jade Idol, Innervate, Jade Idol, and you've basically played like, I don't know, anywhere between 3 to 6 Jade Idols in one turn. You've ramped. When normal Jade decks, by turn 10, your Jades are roughly, I don't know, anywhere between 4 4s and 6 6s. And this deck, you can do that entire thing you're doing through turn 1 through 10 in a normal Jade deck. You can do that in one turn in this deck if played properly. It also runs the Arcane Giants due to the fact that they're free. I know they're 8/8s and I know they're not Jades, but the amount of spells you have in this deck, you're not always able to get the full Jade combo going against more decks like Aggro. It's a little bit more difficult with this deck because you don't have cards like Jade Behemoth to like block that Jade Spirit and all that good stuff. So this deck relies on cards like Arcane Giant to kind of fill the void of where the Jade Behemoth would be. So really cool deck in my opinion. If you're looking for, you want to play your Jades but you want a little spice in your life, try this deck right here. Again, misplaying a turn with this deck is kind of detrimental, but it's not as bad because it's still Jade and it's still kind of face rolly. But you do have to maximize, when you draw, when do you ramp, when do you heal, what's the best time to do which things, because you have very minimal tools at your disposal in regards to like battling minions in the early game, because you only have, the Aya, the Gadgetzan, and I mean, the first creature you play is on turn 6. So all in the early game here is kind of just like survival and ramp, and you have to figure out which one is more important based on your matchup, which is, I think, quite fun. Looking at another Druid deck, this is going to be the Aggro Druid. In my opinion, it is, depending on what you're playing against, could be exceedingly powerful. At the moment, I think if you're playing against a lot of rogue, this is really good because you have cards like Living Mana, and the rogues hate Living Mana. They can't deal with all the 2/2s. They can kill a couple of them, but more than likely, it just shuts them out so hard because there's just no way the rogue deck can make that much value. This deck is also good against basically any control deck that doesn't draw their early game removal. If you're playing against Warlock, they don't end up getting Defile or Hellfire by turn 5 or 6. They're just dead through like a Savage Roar combo or just buffing up little minions. This deck kind of runs the same way the Zoo does. A lot of small resilient minions, but instead of continuously playing them and tapping and them being demons that get brought back through from Gul'dan, you buff them with cards like Power of the Wild and Mark of the Lotus and things like that. Rob, why is there a branching paths in your Aggro Druid deck? Because it basically either acts as another Savage Roar if you need it, or it allows you to draw cards, which this deck currently does not have at all. There's so many times that you just throw up on the board and then your opponent board clears, or they do something and you just are top decking your 1/1s and 1/2s for like 3 turn, hoping to top deck a Savage Roar or a Living Mana or a Bitter Tide. Branching Paths kind of gives you that ability to either give your minions a buff or to cycle. Both of those things are pretty good. So that's why I run one of them. If you don't like it, you can change it. Moving to Shaman. Unfortunately, Shaman is probably one of the least popular classes on ladder, if not the least popular class currently out. It doesn't really have any awesome tool at its disposal. The deck is basically the same Evolved Shaman or Evolved Jade Shaman we saw prior to the expansion. There's not a lot of new inclusions here. You could be like, well, Rob, where's your Elemental Shaman? Where's your, Jade Battle Cry, Elemental N'Zoth Shaman? Where's your big Shaman? Unfortunately, those aren't that popular at all. I mean, if you're going to see a Shaman, more than likely it's going to be this rendition. If you see a big Shaman, it's like a deer. Respect it. Don't scare it away too fast. This deck is actually, I think, my opinion, it catch a lot of people by guard. A lot of people forgot how powerful Coin Doppelgangster, Evolve is, or just Doppelgangster Evolve on turn 6. Not a lot of decks can deal with that still. A Priest have it a little bit better now with the card Scream in their deck. They can just kind of shuffle it all back in your deck, and you're like, well, shit. But a lot of times you can catch people off guard with this deck. I don't want to say it's a terrible deck. It's just not super popular, but if you do play Shaman, it's probably going to be the Shaman deck you play. Heading on over to Mage. Again, Mage really only has one class or one deck at its disposal right now, and that's going to be the Tempo Mage. This deck didn't get a ton, but the cards it did get are exceedingly powerful. It got Explosive Runes, which when we were doing our review, I said this card is fucking nuts. It's a 3-mana fireball that can overlay damage if the minion isn't large enough for the fireball to actually kill and do that to your opponent's face. So that was a card that we knew it was going to be good. And then we got a card like a Lunith, which is going to make up for the fact that we play all of these small creatures, burn spells, value tools, and secrets. So at the end of each turn, we draw 3 cards. This deck is just really, really good right now. Very powerful, very fast pace. Fortunately, if you play the deck and you can't seem to draw your Lunith ever, you can add in some Arcane Intellects to kind of allow you to expedite the process of drawing and hopefully get a Lunith past turn 6. At the moment, I've been able to kind of wiggle my way without the Arcane Intellects. But yeah, if you don't like Spellbender, put in Double Firelands Portal. If you don't like Spellbender, put in Arcane Intellect. If you don't like, the one Cabal Lackey, put in whatever. So this is kind of just give or take anywhere between, some people run Pyroblast, some people run Ice Block. The core of the deck is the same. Summon a bunch of small shit, play secrets, go face, draw a bunch of cards with the Lunith. That's the point. Very powerful deck. Again, Warrior at the moment as well. Before we leave off on Mage, there is some form of Control Mage running around, but it's not popular at all, and the decks aren't refined at all. No one has really come up with a really good Control Mage deck at the moment. I've tried Control Mage. I can't seem to get it to work as much as I wanted to. Not to say the deck is bad, but I think the deck can get better, and I'll continue testing it. And that's one of the things that's holding a lot of these other renditions of decks back. Where's the Control Mage? Where's the Control Paladin? It's not that maybe they're not very good. It's just that people haven't discovered how powerful they are yet because they're just playing the decks that they know are really powerful to get wins. People like winning. They don't want to play new stuff. That's what I'm here for. So I got to play the new stuff. I'll take the sacrifice of losing a whole bunch of games, and then everybody else can win with it once we've modified it to a point of success. Looking at Warrior has basically the Pirate Warrior. Knew the fact that, the Fiery War Axe got reduced, or increased to 3 mana. You can now fit Prince in this deck, and from there, this deck, turn 1 normally doesn't really have a huge power play, but, of course, N'Zoth's First Mate is very good. Southsea Deckhand isn't bad. Turn 2 is hopefully Prince. If not, it's their hero power, and then from there, it's just pirates, weapons, face damage, and it's brutal. So, I don't think Pirate Warrior is out of the meta just yet. I think the deck still has a lot of spunk left in it. I hope we don't see a lot of Pirate Warrior. I don't like playing Pirate Warrior. I don't like playing against Pirate Warrior, but I actually think the deck is pretty solid because, again, there isn't a lot of it. But when there is, like, when you do play Warrior, it's Pirate Warrior, and then you normally get smashed by it because you're like, holy shit, how did they just do 15 damage in 1 turn? Where did this come from? It's only turn 6, and I'm dead. It's turn 4, and I'm dead. It's turn 5, and they have, like, this huge weapon, and then I'm just dead the following turn. So a lot of people have kind of forgotten how powerful this deck actually is. Moving to a class that we have, a very, very popular class right now, the Warlock. This is probably... Warlock and Priest, probably the most popular on ladder, shortly followed by Paladin. This is going to be, I believe this is the control version of the Warlock. A lot of people have been throwing in the Mountain Giants because it's been working out very well with them. So you can play Mountain Giant in your control lock, you can play it in your Cubelock. I don't currently play Mountain Giant in the decks because a lot of people are teching against it at the moment. So when people are playing a lot of stuff, I take it out. When people aren't playing it, I like to put it in. It's just one of my flaws, I guess, but it's what I like to do. This deck revolves around being able to outvalue your opponent to the maximum length you've got written here. So you've got some super late game value with her if you get the seals off. You have the Possessed Lackey combo. Most of the time, Possessed Lackey is going to pull a Despicable Dreadlord, which a lot of people just took out of their control Warlock. I said, why? Paladin's super popular. What does Paladin have? A bunch of 1 HP minions. Despicable Dreadlord loves 1 HP minions, so I threw that guy in there. I was like, why would you ever take this card out? I guess, you know, people play the Giants over the Dreadlords. But regardless, Possessed Lackley normally always has a good target to hit. Barnes, again, normally always has a good target to hit. You Barnes into Despicable Dreadlord. You Barnes into Rin, Lackey, Void Lord. There's just, I mean, every once in a while you'll hit nothing. Like, you'll hit like your Spellbreaker, or your Medivh, but more than likely you'll hit something pretty good most of the time, which is why I have Barnes in here. It also adds to the pool of demons that Gul'dan pulls. You know, if you pull an extra Despicable or Void Lord, it adds to the N'Zoth pool, it adds to the Gul'dan pool, and that's always great. Medivh's in the deck because we run double Twisting Nether, double Siphon Soul. It also works really well with the Rin seals. So, you know, you play a Rin, you get the seal, you drop Medivh, and then you just keep playing the 5-mana seals. And 5-mana free creatures isn't bad. Plus, it already summons the 2/2, the 3/3, and the 4/4, which already come out of the seal. So you put on a lot of pressure. So this deck is insanely powerful at the late game. The only problem is surviving, you know, but that's why we put in double Defile, double Mortal Coil, Mistress, Dark Pact, Barnes, Shadow Bolts, Drain Souls, Hellfires. So we try to put in as much as we could, plus, you know, double Twisting Nether and stuff. Looking at probably the most popular of all of the Warlock decks, and that's going to be the Cubelock. Very, very, very strong at the moment. Revolves around the weapon pulling cards like Doomguard getting hit by the Carnivorous Cube, and then Dark Pacting Carnivorous Cube, but also playing Umbra if you have enough mana, and you basically summon 2 to 4 Doomguards. You smack your opponent for huge amounts of damage. Then from there, you Blood Reaver Gul'dan. Blood Reaver Gul'dan pulls anywhere between 2 to 5 more Doomguards, and you're just doing huge amounts of damage, and not a lot of decks can deal with that. This particular deck isn't mine. This is one of the only ones that I don't want to take credit for. This shows list. I haven't played Cubelock at all because of how popular it is. I don't like playing super popular decks that are super good because it doesn't actually do anything for me. Winning with a deck that we already know is good is pointless for me. There's no satisfaction in that. If you're looking to win, get high ranked on ladder, and hit legend as fast as possible, play those good decks. That's totally fine. But for me, my satisfaction comes with playing shitty decks and beating people who play decks like this. So that's basically the whole point of the deck. You also have the N'Zoth and Blood Reaver, so you still have the same late game as the Control Lock, but you also have a package in here that allows you to win faster as well. But it does this. Keep in mind, this deck runs no Siphon Souls, no Twisting Nethers, so it's very, very, don't lose the board in the late game, because once your Doomguards are gone and you already played your Gul'dan, you got nothing. You got nothing. The least popular of the Warlock decks is probably going to be the Zoolock. At the moment, this is the deck that I want to test the most. I know it looks a little funky. I've put in Skull and I've put in Void Lords just because I hate discarding cards with Doomguard, to be honest. So my Skull can pull a free Doomguard in a Zoo deck. That seems pretty good. But it also runs all of the early game package, and it still runs Prince. So again, there's the normal Zoo deck that everybody's seen, but this is my current Zoo deck. Like to mix it up a little bit. Like at the beginning of the season, I suppose Zoo might be a little bit more popular than where it is at the end of the season, but I've been definitely seeing a lot more of it's like 75% Cubelock, 25% Zoo. I guess 75% Cubelock or Control, and then, you know, 25% Zoo. The deck still is very powerful, especially Blood Reaver. I mean, it's just a fantastic card. I mean, Blood Reaver is just disgusting. And there's also another version of Zoo that doesn't run Prince. It runs the new Homunculus card and Demon Fire, so keep that in mind as well. I've just chose to run Prince because the card's just, there's not a lot of spells in Warlock, which means your Prince always gets huge value. If you played on turn 4, it still gets big value. Played on 5, still big value. Your entire deck, you know, there's only 2 Soulfires in the deck, I guess, and Blood Fury Potion. So there's 4 spells and the weapons. So you got 25 minions that are potentially getting hit by this Prince. So in my opinion, it's just a really good card to still have. Oh wow, that's the end of the video. I thought there was one more deck, but that's about it. So if I happen to leave anything out, I'm really sorry. There's just a lot of decks to go over, and I gotta build them all and put them all in here. So if there's something I missed out, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. If there's something you'd like to add on to, feel free to leave that in the comment section below. That's what it's there for resources used by people looking for a little bit more oomph than what I supplied. With that, thanks for watching, and I will create the next monthly meta at the beginning of the next month, going over all of these any new decks that pop up, and then modifications to decks that have currently already been established. I will see you guys then. Thanks for watching, and happy whatever the hell day it is.